Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Obsidian Entertainment Deadfire Q&A stream with myself. I'm Aarik Dorobiala, the community manager here at Obsidian, and I am joined with Sawyer and Dimitri Berman.
Hi.
Hi.
And we gathered all your questions from the forums. We're going to go through a big list of all the questions, and Josh and Dimitri are going to do the best they can to answer your questions. And then at the last, maybe 20 to 15 minutes of the stream, we're going to get your questions from chat. So please, if you guys have questions, please hold them until the end, towards the end of the stream. And we're just going to go ahead and rapid fire through these questions. So how's it going, Josh? Dimitri?
Pretty well.
Hey,
Pretty well.
it's going good.
How are you doing?
Good. Awesome. Thank you. Ready when you guys
All right.
are.
So we got a lot of questions. We got 9 pages of questions. So I might be a little brief on some of these answers. As always, you can follow up on the Twitters, the Tumblies. You can even follow up in the forum threads. Eric can send me to stuff. Let's dive in. First question from Dex Games. What is the gray circle when sneaking past the Juana Chieftain in the E3 video? Well, let me tell you, I'm colorblind, so I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm pretty sure it was the hearing radius. So Deadfire's stealth system uses both a vision cone that indicates an angle where they can see stuff, and then also a hearing radius. The hearing radius is both smaller in terms of overall distance than the vision cone. The vision cone actually extends out quite far. And if you're in the hearing radius, it's less critical, like they gain suspicion much more slowly. If you stand in someone's vision cone, it ramps up really, really fast. So creatures have both a hearing radius and a vision cone. You will find creatures who have different values for those things. For example, Skulders, if you remember our buddies from Pillars of Eternity, Skulders, the little bat guys, their hearing is incredibly good. So they have significantly larger hearing radii. So that's what that is. Here's a question for Dimitri. Dimitri, are you done modeling the godlike options for the player? It's been said that you had a lot of fun working on these races, but we all know it's because you despise modeling hairstyles. Hashtag hair curls.
I'm done modeling all the base godlike heads, but I'm not done with all the variants of them yet. And modeling godlikes is like really awesome, and it's one of my favorite parts of Eternity 2 for sure.
Did you modeled all the Ganassi, right?
Not all of
One or
them.
two?
Some of them were done by David Espinoza.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But yeah,
Espo.
and godlikes kind of echo that whole idea.
Pretty much we just ripped that off. All right, so another question for Dimitri. The new 3D character display in the inventory looks amazing. Did you have to start all of it from scratch, or did you use base models from the first game?
Yes, everything has been remade. Our initial plan was not to do that. But to achieve the quality level that we wanted, we for sure had to start over. So everything you're seeing in Eternity 2, other than some creatures that have been updated but not done from scratch, we definitely remodeled and redesigned too.
Yeah. If Pillars of Eternity 1 was made content, side content 50-50, that's questionable. What would be your guess for Deadfire? 40-60, 30-70? We know players love side content a lot, especially hidden side content. There's a lot of side content. There's a lot of crit path content, technically, but a lot of those crit path areas, one, they can be done not as faction content, and two, a lot of it is faction-specific content. So, for example, if you include stuff that a faction asks you to go do, the bulk is larger, but there's also a lot of content that you can do where you can do it even if you're not aligned with the faction that might send you to do it officially for a quest. So I don't know what that breakdown exactly is, but there's a ton of optional side content for you to do. It's not like, super focused on a linear crit path. And also we have tried to make it as friendly to skipping around as you want. So there are big sections of the crit path where if you're a super smarty player, you can actually leapfrog sections of the critical path and the story adapts to it. So there you go. Have you iterated on what unique spells the Watcher could have, how to make them feel great and unique? We've started doing some of that, but we haven't gotten that far into it, to be honest. Blind Ink Poet, will we be able to change the figurine that represents the party in the world map? Do you mean like a little robe staff dude? Currently, there's no support for that. It's not a bad idea. I'm skeptical we would do that, but it would be possible. Currently, we're not supporting that. From SMJ James, what was the level of stealth skill in the character in the E3 video? Some people were discussing how in some games which implement pickpocketing, you need ridiculously high stealth in order for it to be useful. Mainly, it's a concern of balance between actual balance and usability. Stealth isn't an easy thing to balance. Correct. I believe that character had a super high stealth because it was just for demonstration purposes, like, hey, I can sneak around and I can get the key. Generally speaking, when we have something that is designed to be a stealth challenge, and not every area is set up to be specifically a stealth challenge, the level of the creature is going to correspond roughly to about what we think like a stealth invested character should be in terms of challenge. So it should feel like, oh, this is an actual gameplay challenge. And if you have a character where you're in an area where it's very over leveled, creature suspicion is going to rise very fast. So it should be more challenging. And of course, if the party is incredibly over leveled and you have massive stealth, then it's going to be really simple to sneak by characters. So it's always sort of a concern, but in the end, this is also a role-playing game where if you over-level something or under-level it, there are going to be different levels of challenge based on that. So that's how that goes. So there's a question about the Ingwithan Titan. Basically, there's a difference between, I'm not going to go through all the details, but basically saying, hey, it looked a little less than spectacular in the E3 vid versus the Fig vid. The Ingwithan Titan, there were some things that weren't quite working properly with it in the E3 video. Some of its attacks weren't working quite properly, and some of its reactions weren't set up quite properly. It's something that's still a work in progress. Also, that fight really shouldn't just be against the single Ingwithan Titan. There's going to be other things coming into that fight to make it a little more interesting. So that's still a work in progress. Will Empower greatly increase accuracy of crowd control abilities? How does Empower work? Empower has a number of different effects based on the type of spell. If a spell has multiple projectiles, Empowering will add more projectiles to it. If it's a damaging spell, it will increase damage and penetration. If it's a healing spell, it will increase healing. There are a number of procedural effects that happen that basically level it up and make it more powerful. And then we also have the ability, or the system designers have the ability to custom script behavior. So if we have a spell or a power that's just really esoteric and weird, we can make the empowering of it work in a special way if we want to. Empower is really useful though. Like, you can use Empower either to restore lost resources during a fight if you run out of uses of abilities, or you can use it to make an individual active power much stronger. And when you use it to make a power much stronger, it's like pretty darn tough. Are the sidekicks such as Edwin still in? Yep, of course. Like that they're a part of our campaign and we're still doing them. So how easy? I'm going to get back to you, Dimitri. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
So how easy? You know what? I'm going to skip down after this one. I'm going to skip back and forth.
Okay.
Karkov? Yeah. Wait.
You say Kark.
Karkarov.
Karkarov. I don't know why I had so much difficulty saying that. Notice I showed it to the Russian guy.
Oh, there was some Russian in chat briefly.
Okay, Dimitri's Russian skills.
How are things? Очень хорошо. Means very good.
Nice. So, how easy it is to mod that UI again? Inquiring Minds or Mind wants to know. I think it's relative. It's easier than it was in Pillars 1. I don't know how to quantify that, but Mitch, our main UI artist, and Kaz and I spent a bunch of time looking at how to modify the UI. It's pretty darn flexible. It does give you a lot of options for things that you can do to customize it. I would say it seems to be, at least from my observation of it, much more powerful than it was and easier than it was in Pillars 1. But of course, once we get into the beta phase and we start seeing fan feedback, we'll know exactly, if we hit the mark on that. There were some things where we sort of questioned, like, is this something that people, certain aspects, like, is this something that people really want to do or that they say they want to do but aren't actually going to do? Is this, something we want to support? Sometimes supporting certain things makes it harder for people to do other things. Anyway, the point is, we put some time and thought into it. I think it's going to be a lot easier and more powerful, but you guys will know for sure once you start using it. And hopefully giving us feedback about it. All right, now I'm going to ask a Dimitri question. Here's a bunch from Andrea Colombo. Dimitri,
Yes.
what is it that you like modeling the best and why?
Now I like modeling people and bases because that's the greatest challenge to me so far. I used to definitely like modeling creatures, but so far, for sure, modeling accurate anatomy and faces with character to them that don't look generic, that have personality to them, has been the biggest challenge, and it's something I've been enjoying the most, for sure.
Kane Parker asks, with spells and abilities being per encounter, will there be adjustment to Chanters, Cyphers, and Monks resource building? No. Not, well, I shouldn't say no, like not really. There are like tweaks to them, but fundamentally, Chanters, Cyphers, and Monks are built around the idea of building up resources over time. So fundamentally, they work the same way. There are some changes though. For example, Chanters now can start with a few phrases in combat. So for example, a lot of people liked how Siren in Tyranny, she had the like hold breath or like to start with some breaths at the beginning of combat. So we're including that for Chanters. They have that ability. So it allows them to get to their invocations a little faster. Otherwise though, it's mostly tweaks, but for the most part, just to sum up quickly, Chanters, Cyphers, and Monks mostly work the same way that they did in Pillars 1. Another Dimitri question. What is the model you're most proud of in Pillars 1, and if you are at liberty to discuss it in Deadfire?
Pillars 1, if we include the expansions, I would say the Eyeless.
The Eyeless, yeah. Yeah, the Eyeless turned out really
Yeah,
cool.
I thought about it, and I like some of the armors, but I honestly like the Eyeless the most.
Yeah.
Pillars 2 would be Aethys. Was it?
No, that's fine.
Whatever. It's out now.
Yeah, if this isn't the game, everybody. Okay, back to Kane Parker question. Will there be new types of weapons? There are not new, like, full categories of weapons, but there are new, like, variants of weapons. There are more, like, one-off weapons where we'll take something and sort of categorize it as another weapon. Like, for example, Shodi, who's a priestess of Gone, she has a sickle, and a sickle is proficiency-wise, it's categorized as a hatchet, but it's a sickle model, and so it's unique. So we do have more stuff like that, but we didn't really want to go crazy expanding the range of what we have. We have so many weapon types in the game.
I don't know what I just did by saying that.
Cool. Dimitri,
Yes.
besides Shodi's hair, what's the most challenging thing to model and why?
It's still hair. It's everyone's hair. I think like tech-wise, that's the most difficult part. But we definitely spent a lot of time on anatomy this time around, getting that accurate, getting our races to feel different, and that was quite a challenge.
Natural black hair.
Yeah, like blonde and natural black hair are quite difficult.
They're hard. Hair. I actually had that come up in a talk somewhere where people were like, why is it that we don't see any like nice big afros? Like, I'll go get my character artist to tell you why you don't see that.
Yeah, I'd have to spend like a year on it, and then you can get it. But it's definitely difficult.
Okay, so where was I? Oh, will accuracy, deflection, and stamina be influenced by class like Pillars of Eternity, or will all classes have the same base values? Accuracy is actually normalized across, like the starting values for classes for accuracy are the same across the board. Other values are still class dependent. If you do multi-classing, it averages those things. The accuracy thing, like accuracy is such a sensitive value. Overall, we were looking, like throughout the game, like overall we were looking for a number of ways to reduce the number of things that contributes to your total accuracy score because it's so incredibly important. And there are so many places to get like little teeny bits put on or taken off. So some of the things are still affected by classes. Accuracy is not one of them. That's just zeroed out essentially for everybody. Dimitri, more hair chat. Speaking of hair, if I recall correctly, you were looking into making long hair show when wearing helmets as opposed to a character suddenly balding up when wearing one in Pillars. Did you succeed? What's the main challenge in this process?
Oh, wow. So it has not been implemented yet. we're still going to try. It's at this point probably a B feature, unless Josh says it's not. The challenge, basically we have to make believable, there's all kinds of programming issues with it and stuff clipping with different helms, different armor outfits. It's a good challenge, but it's not something we cannot do. We wanted to do it for Eternity 1 also, but
I will say, I'm like, because we've done it in other games, like
we have done it
Neverwinter
before.
2,
Yeah.
And the challenge really, outside of the programming stuff, is that there are lots of different shapes of hairs,
Yeah.
and there are lots of different shapes of hats and helmets, and the way in which those things interact can vary a huge amount. So it's very hard to make like one, like, oh, it's just this way. Like we'll cut the hair here, and it'll work on all these helms or hats. That's not, like, usually we need to do some sort of like piecemeal, like different sections turn off for different hats, and then the different hats have to be marked to turn those things off, and
it kind of opens up a lot of opportunities for bugs, which we try and avoid. And if we have bugs, we have to fix them. So it's like it's not simple, but it's not doable.
Yeah. Yes, we have done it before. It's it's a lot of work. Flintlock Jazz. With the skill system being changed, will the mechanical effects of backgrounds also be changed? As in, do they still provide skill bonuses, or will they now give other bonuses instead, and perhaps penalties as well? We haven't revised the backgrounds heavily. Currently, they're still granting bonuses to skills. They grant different bonuses to skills. It's not something we spent a huge amount of time on, but that's something that I think is relatively easy for us to adjust with feedback. So once people start seeing the game and playing around with backgrounds and things like that, we can adjust it relatively easily. But they're not dramatically different. Actually more Dimitri. What's your favorite gear in Pillars 1 looks-wise, and will there be unique armors in the style of the Sanguine Plate in Deadfire?
I do like the Sanguine Plate a lot. I think plate armors in Pillars 1 I liked, which look even cooler by far in Pillars 2. I like the hide armor, and our new hide armor in Deadfire looks even better. There definitely will be unique armors. There's a lot more outfits in general in Pillars 2. Like, there's a lot more variety, and it all looks more different than it did in Pillars 1. So I think you guys will see a lot of cool stuff.
Yep. If the main character is using a custom portrait, how will the new watercolor portraits work with them? Do you pick a watercolor portrait from a list, or will the game attempt to create a watercolor version automatically? No, it's not going to attempt to use watercolor portrait automatically. It looks for a version that's used, a watercolor version. There's like a file naming thing where basically it says like, oh, if this is the portrait, then I'm going to look for this watercolor version of it. If it doesn't exist, it'll use the same portrait and scale it down. It does mean that if you're making custom portraits, you have to make the watercolor versions. They're pretty easy to make. Like, I mean, I am not really an artist, and I made like a crappy one really quickly from an Adara portrait. Like, it's not fantastic, but it totally works. And any artist, really honestly, any artist who is actually capable of making a portrait, and there are tons of them, you can find them all over the internet, can do the watercolor versions pretty fast. One of the main things that we are trying to do with the watercolor portraits is make them very easy and fast for our artists to make, because we want to have a ton of them all throughout the game. So Matt Hansen, I think, can create a watercolor portrait in like less than 30 minutes from a finished portrait. So, and he's doing them at a pretty high level of quality. The resolution is also relatively low, so that helps it. You don't have to render out quite so much stuff. So that's how that works. Dimitri, will there be more variety in clothing, counter outfits compared to Pillars 1?
Yes. So there's a whole huge variety of non-player character outfits. I think we went from something like 8 or 9 in Eternity 1. The last I was tracking, we have like over 32 or in the 40s now.
There's a ton.
There's a lot. We're just trying to bring a lot of life to this world, a lot of variety. So you're going to get all that. It's all tintable. You can customize a lot of stuff.
T-Hold, we'll be taking questions from chat at the last 20 minutes of the stream. Typically we'll end at 5, so around 4:40 is when we'll start answering questions from you guys.
Okay. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Having watched the video for Update 37 and noticing each of the companions seem to get their own stances, will we be able to choose a stance for our own character, like a heroic stance or a pipe smoker stance? Yes.
Yes.
However, you probably are not going to be able to pick the ones that are for the companions, because those are for the companions, and so they have their own unique idols and fidgets, in some cases incorporating things that are unique to them. For example, Shodi's lantern, she incorporates into her fidget. And Palagina like sort of does stuff with her feathers and things like that. So yes, but we are making a set of like sort of attitudes, and the player will get to pick from those attitudes so that their character can sort of have a stance to reflect that. Will there be more hair and beard styles? Are we finally getting King Leonidas and Seneca Crane beards?
I don't know about Seneca Crane, but Leonidas probably. I wouldn't say there will be more, but they'll be different from Eternity 1. They're kind of all being redesigned for Eternity 2. Some, like a small number, might make a comeback. I already ported a few over for males and females, but a lot of them we just have new styles. We basically have to rebuild them for our new engine. At that point, we might as well make them more unique to Deadfire.
Cool. So now I'm gonna start jumping around. Cool. How would a multi-classing enchanter affect their songs? It doesn't directly affect them. It affects them in the same way that it affects other characters. A multi-class chanter has a lower spirits, like sort of power, because they're multi-class, so they don't quite have access to the same high-level invocations and things like that. But otherwise, they work like any other multi-class character. They have a nice blend of whatever the classes that they're using have in terms of abilities, but they're never going to be as individually powerful as a single class character. Dimitri, Josh says you're a Satan worshiper. Is this true, and can you elaborate?
I am interested in occult and in various metaphysical things, but I do not actively worship Satan.
Actively. See, you know,
passively,
it's more of like a hobby, hobbyist. Okay. Will companion skills always matter in dialogue and scripted? This is from Quillian. Will companion skills always matter in dialogue and scripted interactions, or only when it makes sense? Most of the time, companions can chime in or assist. There are cases where it's just your character. Sometimes it's based on distance, and it will show in the scripted interaction or the conversation like who can and can't contribute to that. So if the character is by themselves, or the companions are really far away, then they're not really part of that. That's pretty rare, though. Most of the time, the companions can contribute directly to the check. How do the companion bonuses to skill checks and dialogue work? Does every companion contribute or just the highest score? Infinitron and a couple other people had asked me questions like this. Everyone in the party, every other person in the party other than the player who has points in a skill, that gets added up into a total. And that total is then correlates to like a weighted progression. So it kind of slows down the higher the values get. So it's not a one-to-one thing. It's not like if 3 characters have a total of 9 points, you get +9 to your score. It actually is like a translated value, but they all can contribute to it. So if you want to make the crazy party of everyone in the party has maxed out diplomacy, like, okay, then you will nuke any diplomacy check you come across. That is okay if you decided to build your party that way. If companions die as a result of combat or other choices, will other companions have reactions to their death, such as a conversation about the fallen ally? That depends on the companion and their relationship between them. So companion relationships are a big focus for Deadfire, and a lot of that has to do with the specificity of the relationship between those characters. And that's actually something that we're working on right now. So if the character actually has built up a very strong relationship with someone else, and they do die, our expectation is that, yes, that will lead to some bad fallout with that character. Given the presence of Barrett's Blessing and many players' desire to endlessly experiment with builds, will the introduction of Pillars 2 be shorter than the Pillars 1 encampment plus Sealant Lease? Perhaps one of the possible blessings of Barrett will be to skip the introduction segment of the game. Barrett's blessings do a lot of things. They can start you with a variety of different like goodies. I can't remember if they technically allow you to skip the very beginning of the game, but our starter dungeon is something that you can actually bypass completely now. So as soon as you get to your first location, there's a starter dungeon. You can go into it. You can also just go around it. You're encouraged to go into it, but you don't have to. So if you think of it in the sense of Sealant Lease, the area before going into Sealant Lease, we still have something like that. That's more or less sort of just like that's the very beginning of the game. But then imagine if right after the Storm with Odema, if you could just walk around Sealant Lease and go straight to the Valewood. Like that would be the equivalent. So yeah, you'll be able to skip right over that if you want. Okay. It was mentioned that abilities damage will scale with power source. How will it affect crowd control spells? Also, is the scaling tied with power source points or power source level? So, crowd control generally scales by having longer duration. So, if you, let's say, you got a first level crowd control spell, and your character is 9th level, and it's an arcane spell. If your arcane is like super powerful, then your low level spells are going to get stronger. If it's a damage-based spell, the damage is going to get better, the penetration is going to get better. If it has multiple projectiles, you're going to get more projectiles. If it's a crowd control spell, you're going to get a longer duration on that effect when it hits. And it's tied to power source level. Power source points are just a way, it's like XP towards your power source. So the higher the power source level, the stronger those things will be, and it just keeps scaling up. Let's see here. I'm trying to find another Dimitri-oriented question here. Dimitri, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite thing about working on Deadfire?
I'm definitely enjoying the variety of stuff we have this time around. There's a huge difference in our creatures, outfits, companions. So I really enjoy working on the art for all that. Also, Deadfire has been a great experience. I think we learned a lot from Eternity, and it's been really smooth and nice, and we can just focus on making art and not fighting kind of game engine trying to figure stuff out. That in itself has been pretty awesome, for sure.
Cool.
I think there was. I will look.
Will there be a monk subclass that is closer to the traditional D&D monk or the BG2 fighter kit Kensai that focuses on wearing robes or light armor in melee while not getting hit in the first place? There is a monk subclass called the Shattered Pillar that focuses not on taking damage but on doing damage, and they gain wounds through doing damage. There are trade-offs to that though. Their wound max is lower. And their threshold for like the amount of damage they have to do to get a wound. It's a little slower to acquire, but they can be purely offensively focused if you want to build a Shattered Pillar monk. So there is that character style, and in the vein of the Kensai, there is a fighter subclass called the Devoted that is dedicated to a specific, like, this is my weapon, that's all I'm going to use. So it's not quite the same in the sense of like I'm going to wear light armor and not be hit. But there is that sense of like I'm devoted to a single weapon. So those things do exist. Deadfire environment seem pretty cool. Thanks. Will we have the chance to visit different biomes other than desert and jungle, for example, Arctic? Yes. There's pretty big variety. I mean, one of the reasons why we wanted to set the game in the Deadfire is because it covers a very, very large area, and it spans a huge geographic area, and you have a ship, and so it makes it much more reasonable for you to move from someplace that is a desert to someplace that's very, very cold, or to a volcano, or all over the place. So we do have a pretty big variety of stuff. Will we see any examples of NPCs pushing the limits of their classes in ways akin to Console Hut's magical research and Hungrath's transference of knowledge. Will we encounter or hear about Cypher or Chanter equivalents to Archmages, for example? Trying to think of examples. Yes, you will see some examples of that. Yeah, I don't think I can really talk about any of that stuff. We're also going to have more Archmage hijinks. I think there's a lot of cool material there for the Archmages are all insane idiots. So we want to introduce you to more of that crew. So you're going to get to hear more of their antics. But there's a lot of technological research going on in the Deadfire because of Luminous Adra and other things that people are doing with that. So you're going to see some people pushing some boundaries there. Do you have any more details to share about the talking soulbound weapon, such as whether it's morphic, limited to a single weapon, or type, or for its personality will be slapstick in the vein of Lilacor? Also, how will the current policy on enchantment ceilings and limitations impact the feasibility of its long-term use? We have done a writing pass on the weapon. It seems pretty good so far. I haven't reviewed it in depth, but we have done a writing pass on the weapon. There's a preliminary design path for the weapon in terms of how it upgrades over time, but we'll have to play around with that and see how it feels. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think people will find it very, very entertaining. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. Not pausing the game during dialogue sounds problematic to me. It is. I hope you're implementing something to prevent combat from occurring mid-dialogue. Yes, it pauses the game. If it's pretty rare, like in my time playing through the game, it's really, really rare. Like Fallout 4 has a lot of, for example, because I know a lot of people think about that when they think about the world not pausing during a dialogue. Fallout 4 there's a lot of overlap in areas where you can be talking to someone and a hostile creature can be walking around. And that's where it can lead to these we're having a chat while a Deathclaw is, marauding people in the background and then comes up and cuts my head off. In Deadfire, if you are in a conversation and something is about to initiate combat, like if a hostile creature moves somewhere near you, it will just pause the game. It just pauses the game, and conversation can keep going on, but it basically says okay, we're not gonna let hijinks make the game crappy. So it puts it on pause and you can finish the conversation. And then as soon as conversation ends, then combat will start. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just kind of seeing what else. I think we got through most of this stuff. And some of these are duplicates.
Well, if you're ready for chat.
Oh, hold on. There's one more. Speed enchant is considered by Pillars 1 equally good for all weapons while being much less powerful for weapons with reload animations. Is Deadfire going to address this issue? Yes. We're trying to make the reloads weapons with reloads, meaning crossbows, arbalests, and the various guns, integrate a little bit better into the whole speed economy so that things that speed up attacks and recovery are also going to speed up reloads in general. So that's something that we've been looking at more recently to make it flow more naturally, making recovery the things that instead of having a recovery buffer that goes into the reload, having the reload itself be affected by the recovery value. So heavy armor makes reloading take longer, light armor makes it go by faster, stuff like that. So we're trying to make it just seem like it works like the other mechanics. All right. Nah, that's it. Great. There were a few more, but there were a lot of duplicates or things that I didn't feel that we could answer. So,
all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and open up chat to you guys. So please, we're going to try to answer it as much as we can. So go ahead and fire away.
Will there be more varieties of Godlike in Deadfire, Godlike of Wall or Gallowayne or Andra? Well, there's at least one.
Yeah. Not as playable characters.
Correct. There are not new godlike playable characters.
Right.
Although all of them have been remodeled.
Right.
So
they're
they look
kind of
really
new.
awesome. But then there's Takehu. So
Yeah.
Takehu is one of our new companions, and he is a unique godlike. So there's him. Hey Josh, are wizards going to have a silent casting mode for sneak-focused wizards akin to D&D's silent spell? To add to that, can a blinded affliction on an enemy NPC make it harder for them to detect sneaking character? So there's not a silent casting mode or anything like that, but there are some spells that we mark as being particularly quiet. So if you want to actually smack something and not draw a bunch of attention, because we're actually making those sound radii like meaningful. So if you cast a fireball, it will actually people or creatures will come to investigate. But there are some spells that are marked as quiet spells, and the casting itself is not particularly loud, and then the projectile itself, which is usually what draws the attention, is relatively quiet. So there are spells that you can use if you want to be more like, I'm going to smack this character sort of from secret. Where are we? Let's say I don't want companions to give me a hand passing checks. Are we going to be able to opt out of that? No. Will Firearms be getting anything new feature-wise, tweaks or something? Yes. There are proficiencies for... So a lot of the abilities, or a lot of the things that were talents for weapons, like Savage Attack or Powder Burns or things like that you would buy as talents, are now things that you get when you take proficiency in a weapon. So proficiencies are a thing that you just get over time, more like 2nd edition AD&D. So at first level, you can get proficiencies in things, and then you add more proficiencies. And then anytime you have a proficient weapon equipped, you can use the modal for that to change up the behavior for it. So for a hunting bow, you get rapid shot. You can just switch between rapid and standard shot. Things like powder burns are now like inherently built into the weapon. So firearms have all that stuff built into it. I know that there are a number of unique firearms coming through that are really, really cool. Yeah, so there's some cool stuff coming for firearms. Also, Seraphin, one of our new companions, has a unique firearm, which is a hand mortar, and that actually is an AoE weapon. So he will shoot it into an area and it explodes. It is a unique weapon, but he doesn't have to use it. You can give it to someone else. You can get rid of it. You can do whatever you want with it. What does the leaden key mean? A key made of lead is very soft, and if you turn it in a lock, it breaks off in the lock. And so the leaden key is a group that seeks to trap people who are trying to find forbidden knowledge, luring them into trying to find that knowledge, and then trapping them when they try to do it. That's what the leaden key is. Where's it? Oh, Dimitri, are you modeling the ship types also?
No.
No. Will we have... Let me ask you a question that you just say no to.
I am not, but
will we have
environment artists are.
Will we have a sneak peek of concept art of those shape, size, design anytime soon?
We have a lot of concept art.
Well, we have more in concept art. They're all done.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff we can show. When we'll show, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff done. It looks like, yeah, the ships look really cool.
Yeah.
And we can't show all the ships because some of the ships are
secret ships.
Mysterious
ships.
So, yeah.
All right, here's one from Twitter. Orlan character models in the first game were insufficiently fuzzy. How much fuzzier will Orlan's be in Deadfire?
They will be fuzzier. I actually remade Orlan's multiple times for Deadfire. The initial models were very, very fuzzy. They were covered in fur, head to toe. It was pretty cool, but when we put them in the game, Adam told me they were too expensive. So we had to kind of dial them back a little bit. So they're definitely completely redone for Deadfire, but we'll have to implement some kind of technical solutions to get them fuzzier in the future, which I'd love to do.
So in Deadfire, a wizard or priest will be as accurate with a sword and all their weapons as a fighter, paladin, or rogue. How odd. I really dislike uniformity in RPG systems. Yes, that is the same, other than the fact that they're awful in all other regards at fighting toe-to-toe with people. So the fact that they have no abilities oriented towards doing that and their health is really low, their accuracy is the same, but that's not really the thing. It's sort of like in D&D, you can, if you gave the same FACO or base attack bonus to a fighter, and then said, like, go and stand with a sword and fight, like, they don't really have many abilities to use with that sword. So the accuracy is a really small part of that. And ultimately, even in Pillars 1, like, that base value is not, there's not a huge difference there. So that was one of the reasons why we got rid of that. Like, it really wasn't sort of a super meaningful distinction. It seems like it's important, but in the grand scheme of things, it just sort of muddied what was going on there. Are Cypher abilities learned, inborn, or somewhere in between? They can be sort of intuited. We have the concept of sort of wild talents in the game, or in the world at least. So some people learn how to be Cyphers just sort of like by discovering it. This is especially common among Orlans and Erglonfoth for some reason. But other people are trained in it. So at places like Dunreed Row, there's more formal training for it. So it's a mixture of things, but it is something that people can sort of naturally intuit and learn. But if they have formal training, the idea is that it's a little easier to pick up. Level scaling. Will there be an option to scale enemies up but not down? No, there's an option to scale. Basically, there's an option to scale just a crit path, everything, or nothing. And it's always within a specific bounded range. So it's never gonna, I shouldn't say never, but like there's a range in which things will get scaled. It won't just scale forever in either direction. It'll always be capped. BG2 had a pretty open chapter early on where the player could choose which order to tackle areas outside Athkatla. I really liked that, and it adds to the replayability. Pillars felt a lot more main story focused and perhaps linear in comparison. What can we expect from Pillars 2 in this regard? The world opens up pretty early on in Deadfire and gives you a lot of flexibility to go to places whenever you want to. And the critical path of the story is also designed. At times, we take a lot of pains to allow the player to do things in a weird order if they want to. So that was a big focus. I really wanted to say, like, look, unless there's a really, really extremely good reason to not let a player go somewhere, if they find it out of order, just let them go there. It's okay. So we've tried to carry that through with most of our areas and quests. Can you scroll on down? Hi, don't you think that the principle that players can kill every NPC after first conversation severely damages your quest designers and writers' ability to tell stories? If I thought that that was the most important thing about the games that we make, yeah. But, like, read a book if that's what you want. Like, if a designer or a writer comes here and their goal is to tell their story, I don't want them working on the project. Like, the point of this is that it's supposed to be about the interaction between what the player wants to do and the ideas that we have. The whole point of what the area designers and the writers do is to create a space in which the player has freedom to do a bunch of things that seem cool. And much like if you sit at a tabletop game and you play with a dungeon master who doesn't allow you to kill NPCs that they think are really precious, it feels bad and it stinks and it feels like you don't actually get to do what you want to do. So yes, it limits them. Too bad. That's the way that this game is sort of set up, is to, as much as we can, allow the player to have more freedom in what they do. So yes, it's a rule. I don't care that they don't like it. Actually, I haven't found a lot of people who don't like it. It's a challenge that they have to adapt to, but it's for the benefit of the player. We're making these things for the benefit of players, not for the benefits of, like, patting ourselves on the back and making people think we're amazing. If people don't have fun with it, it doesn't really matter. So in cases where someone can't be killed, we try to be very careful about that and not break the rules that we've set up. So for example, if a character is in a cutscene and then walks off, that is okay. What is not okay is having a character that talks to you and then you exit conversation and then you're either prevented from attacking them or you hit them with a fireball and they just, sort of ignore it, or we say like, oh no, you can't kill that character. So it is hard for us, but that's the challenge. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make this for players, to make them feel, not just feel, but that they are free to do what they want to do. Maya's class seems pretty ingrained in her character. Will she still have 2 possible classes like a dare, rogue, and fighter? Does her bird disappear if she's not a ranger? Maya is not a multi-class, like she's not an either or character. Maya is always a ranger when you get her. So you can combine that with other classes, but she's always going to fundamentally, she is a ranger. That's an inherent part of who she is. And as is Ashiza, like Ashiza is her animal companion. How viable will a Lightleaf build be? I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if Lightleaf is in Deadfire, which might be scary for a dare. So I don't know. I have to actually check that because we have a bunch of new drugs, but yeah. Maybe Dimitri, you can maybe answer some of this. Considering the graphical improvements in Pillars 2, will you still be targeting low NPCs for the game to run on?
Yes. Adam did not allow us to do stuff that would bog the game down. So even though it looks a lot better, we're absolutely still targeting a low-end performance with it. There's been a lot of optimization done, but Adam will probably answer that a lot better.
Yeah, we're currently still testing. I don't know if the min spec will be literally the same min spec as Pillars 1, but our min spec machine that we're testing it on is still
like
the same specs.
Pretty min.
Yeah, so we're ideally we want to keep it the exact same.
Yeah.
It might go up a little bit, but we're really trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Right. Blackplate.
Is there any Blackplate armor in the game, Dimitri?
We're actually about to make a character with Blackplate. So I think there might be.
Yeah. I remember you guys being pretty confident about before Pillars came out that the game had a balanced power and level growth curve. When the game came out, it was pretty effed. Why did you make that mistake, and why do you think it won't happen again in Deadfire? Some of our designers were really confused about how the XP tables worked, which I didn't really understand the extent to which they were confused about it. And it wound up being imbalanced in a way that I thought was kind of odd. The side content was really supposed to grant a pretty marginal amount of XP, and it didn't wind up really doing that. But then again, like those XP values are very hard to change once you've launched the game because it's changing the total amount of XP that you can get in the game. So I think that was one big contributing factor to it. There were also some things in the middle of the game structurally that were hard to balance around, like when you get to when you get to Defiance Bay, and then you have 3 things you can do in any order, that specific thing is really hard to balance around, and then it makes everything after it difficult to balance around. In Deadfire, well, there are a couple of things. One, Deadfire, I think we have a better across-the-board understanding of how those XP tables work. It's more straightforward for the area designers to manage. We also have built-in systemic level scaling, and that will work more consistently for everything. Like the level scaling that we did in the White March was really like not really super well integrated, and a lot of people have mentioned it, and they don't like how the opting into scaling at various points can produce really radically different experiences. So overall, I think that we have a better understanding of how the XP distribution works overall, and the level scaling is better and more well integrated, and also the structure of the critical path is a little less problematic in terms of structuring content for the types of things that the character is doing. When importing Pillars 1 to Deadfire, will the character creator attempt to make the equivalent paper doll to your original, or will you have to recreate your Watcher's appearance? Well, you're going to have to recreate it.
Well, Yeah, we can kind of try it a little bit.
No, we're not.
No, okay.
It's not really worth it because, well, one, like making the paper doll it's not a long thing for the player, and we're remaking all this stuff from scratch, and so like it's not even really equivalent. Like the models look so different.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of value. It would be hard to do, and I don't think players really get a whole lot out of it. And in the end, setting up your character's appearance is pretty fast. Like, we don't have super crazy facial customization or anything like that.
Right.
Just because we don't.
Just pick your style and go. But it gives you an opportunity to kind of do something different too.
Yeah. I could have sworn at one point in development they said that when you get companions, you can pick what class they are, so you don't get a situation where you can't integrate a character you really like in the party because their class is wrong. Was I just misremembering that? Some characters, yes. There are certain characters where what class they are is sort of integral to who they are. And whether it's Maya or Pelagina being a paladin. And we have a lot of characters like Adair or Takehu who are multi-class, and you can advance them either as one class or another, or as a multi-class of either of those classes. So you really do have a lot of flexibility in how you advance those characters. And for example, if you take Maya and you are also a ranger, you can multi-class Maya. Like, you don't have to play her as a strict ranger. So in addition to Maya having her own subclass, you being potentially a ranger with your own subclass, and different animal companions, you can also multi-class. So I don't really think there's like a huge concern there. And there are enough companions where you can just completely switch their core class. Right now in our testing that we're doing internally, Adair is playing as a rogue, just to see like, how does Adair play as a rogue? Answer, plays pretty well. So there's quite a bit of flexibility there, but yes, we could theoretically allow you to make any character literally any class, but at a certain point, there is a certain amount of identity that the character has with the class concept that I think just gets completely lost if they don't actually have any class basis to that. How is a player supposed to find the right pre-spell to use when there are so many? Is this different in Pillars 2? Yes. We've tried to make the priest list especially much more focused than it was in Pillars 1. I think that our affliction and inspiration system is easier to understand. It's more consistent. So finding the things to counter certain spells and abilities. Countering is listed directly in the spell descriptions. So that that alone should make things much, much easier. But the overall list is much smaller. You're picking from a smaller list of things. I believe it should be much more straightforward for people. So far in testing, people seem to find using the priests much easier than they found them in Pillars 1. Gromnir, Dimitri, congrats on the Sub Rosa inclusion of Pillars 2 cowboy hats. Will we see equipable cowboy dusters in Pillars 2?
Negative.
How did that outfit even get in there anyway, or is that secret?
Secret.
Yeah, I can't even remember.
It's a variant of a hat that was supposed to be made, and we ended up making that version first. Because it looked cool with how it fit the character.
There you go. I saw on Twitter that we'll get some magical broom as a weapon. Can you elaborate? Yeah, so we're trying to get like just a wilder and wackier range of weapons into the game. And instead of doing like really top-down weapon and armor designs where it seems really driven kind of by production concerns, which is what we did on Pillars 1, I've tried to make the process much more fun, I guess, like much more about like just a cool concept for something. Like we come up with a concept, we talk to art and system about, hey, can you make something cool with this concept? And then we let art and systems run with that as opposed to kind of making a bunch of categories of things and a production schedule and then bearing down from that. So one of the things, one of the testers, Andy Arts, I think it was Andy, right? Yeah, Andy Arts was like, I want a broom for a weapon. And and I don't remember, I think he had some other thematic things about it, like it should be able to sweep up negative status effects and some other stuff. And I was like, what? And then plus, what made it better is that there's a Matt Sheets hated the idea. He was like, oh, that's the worst idea I've ever seen. And I'm like, it's going in. Cause we needed brooms anyway for a bunch of ambient and idle animations. Right. And so I said, okay, let's make like, well, we need to make the broom, so let's make like a super cool broom weapon that's essentially a quarterstaff. And I can't remember all of its abilities, but it can be used on allies to like sweep away negative status effects. So that element of what Andy wanted went in there as well. It's pretty cool. So, but that's the thing, is like we're trying to say like, what's something that just sounds kind of fun? Can we turn that into something that looks cool and has neat effects, neat gameplay effects that are distinctive, and then we just develop it that way. And so far, I think we're getting a much more interesting variety of weapons than we had in the base game.
How about a fishing rod that catches love?
What? Did you just make that up?
Yeah.
Wow. Go put that on the request page, Dimitri. You're probably going to wind up modeling it.
We can wrap it up anytime.
Oh, are we almost done?
Yeah. I mean, you keep going as long as you want.
I'll go for like 5 more minutes, but yeah, I'm losing my voice. Before the White March, a lot of named unique weapons felt underwhelming since they were mostly just mixes of enchants you can do yourself. Will we see more unique attributes in loot? 1, yes. 2, the enchantment system is now very, very different. Some people I've heard don't really like it. I'm sorry, but I think it's for a good reason that we're making these changes. So the enchantment system now is really about building up what is already on the weapon as opposed to just throwing stuff onto it. So in Pillars 1, you could put various elemental lashes on weapons, kind of whatever you wanted. You could put various slaying, of slaying beasts, of slaying whatever, onto a weapon. And that felt a little weird. It didn't really feel like it fit very well, I admit that. But now what happens is if you find a weapon that is, for example, a weapon of beast slaying, that beast slaying enchantment can be upgraded in a number of different ways. It's not a huge, crazy system, but the idea is that each unique property can be upgraded in a couple of different ways. And you might have a couple of weapons that have one, a property that's similar, but they have a bunch of different other properties, some of which are very unique and can be upgraded in completely unique ways. So in addition to the weapons, having a bunch of new unique properties, the enchantment system is very different and I think feels very cool. And the appearances are really varied as well. And let's maybe do, is there one more for Dimitri maybe? Overall, do you balance combat at all around people attempting solo challenges, or you just assume that RPG nerds will always find a way? I assume that they're always going to find a way. Like we really do not balance combat around individual players. We really design our combat around full parties on normal and hard, and those are the two main groups we focus on. It's not to say that we never play on other difficulties or like as solo or anything like that, but and the game has to be technically completable by a solo character. But for example, like we don't design around the ultimate or any of those crazy challenges. Read our forums, like read threads on Reddit. Like go on YouTube. Like there are people that, when I saw the dude who did the wizard ultimate, like that was crazy. But I was glad because that guy was using spells that I think get underused in the base game. So yeah, I know that there's always going to be a way for players to figure out how to beat anything. So we don't really design around that. I think that's about it. All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much so much for hanging out with us on stream today and asking awesome questions. Thank you, Josh and Dimitri, for taking time out of your busy schedules.
Thank you, guys.
We will be having another Q&A stream in the future, so if your questions did not get answered, don't worry. We'll have another stream, and you'll have another opportunity to get your questions asked. Please make sure you follow us on the forums at forums.obsidian.net. And as you notice to the side here, this side, next to Dimitri, there's some fan art. Feel free to send us your fan art via Twitter, and I'll showcase it in the stream. So please make sure you follow the Twitch channel to get notified when we go live with more dev streams and charity streams, and also follow us on Twitter to get all the latest news on what's happening here at Obsidian. So thank you guys very much for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Farewell.